From murder to madness, from battlefield deaths to execution, this is how every French king met his end. For over 1,000 years, France was ruled by a succession of monarchs from different dynasties, each leaving their mark on history. But while their lives were filled with power, intrigue, and glory, their deaths were often just as dramatic. We'll journey through the Merovingian, Carolingian, Capetian, Valois, and Bourbon dynasties to uncover the final moments of every single French king in chronological order. Our story begins with the Merovingians, the first dynasty to rule the Franks. Clovis I, the great unifier, died of natural causes in 511, a peaceful end for a warrior king. His son, Clothar I, wasn't so lucky, succumbing to a severe case of pneumonia in 561. His grandson, Charibert I, also died of natural causes a few years later, but then things take a darker turn. Chilperic I was assassinated in 584, stabbed by an unknown killer while returning from a hunt. The dynasty continued with Clothar II, who died peacefully, and Dagobert I, who likely succumbed to a nasty intestinal disease. The Merovingian line fizzled out with Childeric III, who was deposed and sent to live out his days in a monastery, dying quietly in 754. Next, the Carolingians rose to power, a dynasty that would produce one of history's most famous rulers. It began with Pepin the Short, who died of a fever in 768. His son was none other than Charlemagne, the great emperor. After a legendary reign, Charlemagne died in 814 from pleurisy, a lung infection. His successor, Louis the Pious, died of natural causes while on a military campaign. The next king, Charles the Bald, also met his end from an illness while on the road. His son, Louis the Stammerer, had a short and sickly reign, dying just 2 years later in 879. The Carolingian grip on power began to weaken. Charles the Simple, ironically, had a very complicated end, dying in prison in 929 after being betrayed by his vassals. The dynasty ended with a crash. In 987, the last Carolingian king, Louis V, died in a hunting accident after falling from his horse. His untimely death paved the way for a new royal house. The Capetian dynasty would go on to be one of the longest-lasting royal houses in European history. Its founder, Hugh Capet, died of natural causes in 996. His successors Robert II and Henry I both died of fevers or illnesses. Philip I, however, had a more unusual end in 1108, dying from complications related to severe obesity. His son, Louis VI, known as the Fat, ironically died of dysentery, a common medieval affliction. Louis VII died in 1180, likely from a stroke or simply old age. The formidable Philip II, also known as Philip Augustus, died of a fever in 1223. His son, Louis VIII, died just 3 years later, with rumors swirling about poison, though dysentery was the official cause. Then came Louis IX, better known as Saint Louis, a devout king. He died of plague in Tunis in 1270 while on his second crusade. His son, Philip III, also died of dysentery while on campaign. Philip IV, known as the Fair, had a dramatic end in 1314. He suffered a stroke shortly after a hunting accident, a strange parallel to the end of the Carolingians. His son, Louis X, died just 2 years later, likely from pneumonia after a vigorous game of tennis. His brother, Philip V, died of dysentery, and the last of the 3 brothers, Charles IV, died of illness in 1328, bringing the direct Capetian line to a close. This led to the rise of the Valois dynasty, a period marked by war, plague, and assassinations. The first Valois king, Philip VI, died of the Black Death in 1350. His son, John II, had one of the most tragic ends, dying in captivity in London in 1360 after being captured by the English. His son, Charles V, died of a lingering illness. He was followed by Charles VI, famously known as the Mad King, who suffered from severe mental illness for much of his reign and died in 1422. His son, Charles VII eventually drove the English out of France and died of illness in 1461. The next king, Louis XI, known as the Spider King for his cunning, died after a series of strokes. His successor, Charles VIII, had one of the most bizarre deaths in royal history. In 1498, he died after hitting his head on a low doorframe. Louis XII died of complications from gout, while the great Renaissance king, Francis I, died in 1547, possibly from syphilis or kidney failure. His son, Henry II, met a truly grisly end. In 1559, during a jousting tournament, a splinter from his opponent's lance pierced his eye, and he died from the wound days later. His sickly son, Francis II, died the next year from an ear infection that led to a brain abscess. The next king, Charles IX, died of tuberculosis. The whispers of poisoning followed him to the grave. The Valois dynasty ended in bloodshed. In 1589, Henry III was assassinated by a radical monk who stabbed him during a private audience. This brought the Bourbon dynasty to the throne, beginning with Henry IV. But his reign also ended violently. In 1610, he was assassinated, stabbed to death in his carriage by a Catholic fanatic. His son, Louis XIII, died of tuberculosis. Then came the most famous French king of all, Louis XIV, the Sun King. After an unparalleled 72-year reign, he died in 1715 from a gruesome case of gangrene in his leg. His great-grandson, Louis XV, died of smallpox in 1774. And that brings us to the most infamous end of all. Louis XVI, caught in the storm of the French Revolution, was executed by guillotine in 1793. The monarchy was eventually restored, with his brother Louis XVIII taking the throne. He died in 1824 from obesity-related illnesses and gangrene. He was succeeded by his brother, Charles X, who was overthrown and died of cholera while in exile. The final king, Louis Philippe I, was also forced to abdicate and died peacefully in exile in England in 1850, bringing the age of French kings to a definitive close. So let's tally the final score. Out of 49 kings, at least 3 were assassinated. 1 was executed, at least 2 died in accidents. And a staggering number, over 30, died from various illnesses, from plague and dysentery to gangrene and smallpox. It just goes to show, no matter how powerful a king is, no matter how grand their palace or vast their kingdom, death comes for them all. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this journey through history, don't forget to like and subscribe for more.